Assalamu alaikum. We'll be getting started here shortly. Please silence your devices, inshallah, and don't lean on the walls. And be mindful of the cameras. We are live.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونؤمن به ونتوكل عليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور انفسنا ومن سيئات اعمالنا واشهد ان لا اله الا الله وحده لا شريك له واشهد ان محمدا عبده ورسوله اما بعد اعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Brothers and sisters, before getting into the theme of the Qur'an today, as I asked before the beginning of each Qur'an, that we remember our brothers and sisters throughout this ummah of the Prophet Muhammad who may be suffering, whether we know the cause or not, or the cause of their suffering. And I want us to just make dua and just have a moment of reflection during this Khutbah, but also afterwards. And let us not take the plight, the condition of what the Palestinian people are going through right now. We're talking about a 75-year occupation. But what we're witnessing in Gaza and now in the West Bank against the Palestinians is something that we haven't seen in decades. Just the kind of indiscriminate slaughter of human beings. And it starts at the top by just devaluing the life of the Palestinians. And Herzog and Netanyahu and the leaders of this coalition government have attempted to dehumanize the Palestinian people, classifying them as animals, so because they're animals, you can do anything that you want to do to them. And we're witnessing a kind of slaughter. There's an expression in this country, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, meaning that the slaughter is taking place against the Palestinian people, and particularly those in Gaza. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. That you have a group of people who are together, and it's so easy to just take their lives if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wills. That it's like shooting fish in a barrel. And so now we see that, and on the news, you just keep seeing images of houses and apartments and hospitals just being blown up by rockets. But now on the West Bank, for my information and for your information, the Israeli government has armed settlers. And these settlers are going throughout the West Bank and terrorizing the Israeli Palestinians, those who've been granted citizenship living in the West Bank, in that area, well, where Al-Aqsa Mosque and beyond. And these settlers have a license because they've been issued guns, machine guns by the government to protect your land. And so now the Palestinians in the West Bank are saying that they are afraid to come out of their houses because every time they come out, they know they could be stepping into this mob of crazed settlers who've been given a license, like the Ku Klux Klan in the United States years ago, just given a license to terrorize people and do whatever you want to do to them. And so I'm asking that let's not, and I hope that no time that we are making dua for any individuals or group of people, at no time do we just blow it off. And it's just something that we're saying for the purpose of the Jumah setting. But I'm asking that we take this measure that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us to make dua for our brothers and sisters, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will relieve the suffering of our brothers and sisters in Palestine. Brothers and sisters, I'm not going to take much of the time today, but I want to just give a kind of commentary based on the Qur'an and Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam about what is a concept, what's the Islamic concept of history. You know, we read this book and we find so many stories about people, believers and disbelievers who come before us. We see triumph, we see victory, we see devastation, we see death. We see all of these things in reading the Qur'an, but there's a big difference in when we read the Qur'an and try to get an understanding of the history that is in this book is totally different than the history that we will read coming from any of our hands or from anybody, because our history is going to reflect what our interests, what our beliefs are, who we are as a people. Is going to reflect what is my race, what is my nationality, what is my ethnicity, where am I living today, what is my interest in the place where I'm living. That's the kind of history, no matter how much anyone tries to be objective, that's the history that we're reading today. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with an eternal book. That there's no prejudice at all in this book. It's just straight history coming from the Lord of the universe. There's a Quranic concept of history that can't be matched by any historian in any time, in any place. So when we read this Qur'an and we read these stories and we read these narratives that are in Qur'an, we're reading about something that is true all the way to Qiyamah. Think about this. Who could give us a book of history that goes all the way to Yom Qiyamah and even into the Akhirah other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So rather than me and you being so obsessed with what's going on in history and what's going on and what we're reading and experiencing today, there's a simple formula. Just get into the Qur'an, read this book, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us an understanding about what's happening today, right in this country, what's happening in Palestine, what's happening anywhere on earth. Read it, be encouraged by what you read, and not be so depressed. And I'm saying this because I have to catch myself, because it's a very emotionally depressing history that's unfolding in front of our eyes. And if you and I don't bury our heads in this Qur'an and the Sunnah of of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu, we find ourselves not understanding how to process what's going on. Because there are not many periods in history when so many nations of the world, especially in this information age, will sit around like their mouths are welded shut, not say a word about what's going on. An open genocide, not something that is being promised, but an open genocide is unfolding in front of our eyes. So if you and I don't keep our head in this book, I'm not saying ignore what's going on, by no means, but if we are to understand what is going on, keep our heads in this Qur'an. Read this book more than we watch the news. Read this book more than we read commentaries about current events. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, unlike anything, any information that we may gather, no matter what source it comes from, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in every instance is giving us in the Qur'an the cause of why things were happening, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us the effect. Every story that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has in the Qur'an, there's a cause that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us, and then He gives us the effect. What happens after these particular events come about? And so I want to give a very simplistic concept or idea about this Quranic concept of history. It's a kind of history that just has one common goal, no matter what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran. There's only one motivation for us to read and to understand this history. Not complex, no difficult political theories to understand. It's just that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us a history that's embedded in the how do we get to the Akhirah. Every human being, regardless of where we live, no matter what our income may be, no matter what our race or ethnicity, nationality may be, when we read the Quran, it is a book that is giving us cause and effect and is leading us to the Akhirah. Every story in the Quran, is a story, it's a narrative about getting to the Akhirah. If we truly believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the next day, then when we read this book, we'll come away with every reading thinking about the Akhirah, thinking about the next life. Reflect on those who came before us, even those who came before the revelation of the Quran. Reflect on their history, reflect on their stories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us in the Quran. Brothers and sisters, when we look at the history of Islam under the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we find that this unique history under the leadership of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was one of triumph. It was one of victory. It was one of slaughter. It was one of death. It was one of the guidance. The most important thing was the guidance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but it was also one of deprivation. Periods, even the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam not having sufficient food to eat. Periods where the hadith literature tells us that Aisha radiallahu anha had said that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam sometime in our house there would go months before we would even kindle a fire. There was no need to have a fire because there was nothing to cook. We didn't have food to eat, and we even required require having a fire. So we just ate dates, or we just drank water, we just drank milk that was given to us by other Sahaba. It's a story that is underscored by getting to the aqua, what it takes for you and I today, when we read the story of the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, when we read the story of the Sahaba, it's about giving us this idea of what it takes to get to the aqua. Brothers and sisters, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Qur'an, do you think that you are going to enter paradise without suffering trials and pain and having all the suffering? But the test is going to come to you just as it came to those before us. That we're going to suffer. Allah promises this. I'm talking about those who are firm in their conviction to Islam. It's not just those of us who identify and say, I'm Muslim in faith, but this is a guarantee for us to go to paradise. It's not. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in this Quran that you think, talking to us, whoever's reading this book, that you're going to make it to paradise without pain and suffering and struggle. This was the legacy of those who came before you. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it clear in this book of the Quran that this was their history. There's no easy path. There's no GPS that we can set and say that this path to Jannah is, then I can follow this particular path using my life GPS and I'll just get there. No. There is a set requirement and a set path that you and I must follow in any time and any age if we are to be granted the rahmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be allowed into Jannah. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us in the Quran that around the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and around other prophets, that the Prophet himself would declare with just wonder and would say, ask, when will come the help of Allah? That these are, it's not just limited to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is an expression out of human emotion, because all of these prophets were human beings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gifted with revelation. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, referencing the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, referencing previous prophets, is saying that the conditions were so difficult that now the Prophet himself and those who were with him were asking, when will come the help of Allah? That it looks like we're just going to be wiped completely out. That it looks like we can't take any more than what has been put on us. And so this legitimate cry goes out, when will come the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala responded, Allah inna nasrullahi qareeb, that verily the help of Allah is always near. That there's no point, there's no period, no matter how difficult the circumstances may be, that the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always near, regardless of what we're going through. If we remain firm in our belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a commitment to this deen. This is not a saying, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best, but this is not something that those of us who are hitting and missing with our practice of Islam. That one day we are super Muslim, and then the next day we're doing things that we don't want anybody to know that we're doing. That this guarantee from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is not a warning, but it's an announcement to any of the believers, individually or collectively, who are going through difficult times, that verily the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is always near. That this help of Allah, as we know, comes in different kinds of ways. And I want to share this hadith that we find in the Sahih collections of hadith, where Ka'b ibn Malik reported that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that verily the souls of martyrs are in green birds hanging from the fruits of paradise or from the trees of paradise. That Ka'b ibn Malik is relating that he heard the Prophet Muhammad saying that those people that we see being martyred, being killed, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has their soul encased in these green birds and they're flying around in paradise. You know, when you remember when the cousin of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Ja'far ibn Abu Talib, the brother of Ali ibn Abu Talib, that when Ja'far was martyred on the field of battle, that one of his arms was cut off while he was fighting. And so when that arm dropped off, Ja'far then took his sword in the arm and the hand that remained attached to his body, and he continued to fight until that arm was cut off. And the Sirah literature tells us that then some kind of way he was able to get what was left of his nub hanging from his shoulder. He was able to get the sword up under that and continue to try to fight until he was shaheed, until he was martyred. And so the Prophet Muhammad made it clear this is a beloved relative of the Prophet Muhammad. The Prophet Muhammad made it clear that don't cry, don't feel bad for Ja'far, because Ja'far is flying around in Jannah. He's in paradise. He's already there waiting for you. Don't feel bad for him, because the whole purpose of this thing is to achieve the paradise, Jannah to Firdaus, if Allah is so merciful to us. So don't feel bad for those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taken their soul, and that as they remain firm in this deen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed for us. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. Brothers and sisters, the situation that has been unfolding, not just in Palestine and not just in Gaza, but around this earth, around this world, that it's easy to look, particularly in areas where Muslims are living in a large population. It's easy to see that this ummah of the Prophet Muhammad has become an object of persecution in so many areas. That those who remain firm to this commitment to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala even look and see what's going on even in Muslim majority countries, that those who are remaining firm and holding on to this rope of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the way that it has been prescribed, that even they are being tortured and killed, even in Muslim majority countries. And so just being Muslim is not enough. Just saying Shahada is not enough. And we can see that today in the behavior of so many Muslims here and across the world today. So regardless of what is going on, what is happening to our brothers and sisters, whether it's Philistine, whether it's in China, whether it's in Myanmar, no matter where it may be, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guarantees success to the believers. Now, I don't know the origin of this particular letter that was passed on to me the other day. I don't know. It was sent to me, having been said that this was written by a Muslim sister in Gaza. A Muslim sister in Gaza. And I just want to interject this quickly. That I find it so, in a way, refreshing to see these images of what is going on in Gaza and see Muslim sisters being interviewed. And Muslim sisters saying, all I have is what I was able to put on my back and to leave my bombed out home. This is all that I have. We don't have food, we don't have water. It's so encouraging seeing these images of these sisters in full hijab. And the only clothes that I have are what I normally wear outside my home on a day-to-day basis. I only have one set of clothes, and that set of clothes that I'm wearing is hijab. That regardless of the persecution that we've undergone, it has not stopped me from dressing in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has prescribed. So let me read this quickly. And it reads that if Allah lifted the veil for just 10 minutes and you could see the sky of Palestine, you would see a sight of wonder. Waves of angels racing to ascend with the souls of the martyrs to Allah in a special celebration. I swear by Allah, besides whom there's no God but him, the sky is filled with the scent of perfume. These people have completed their test in this world, so there's no need for them to stay in this world. Allah has chosen them for paradise. You see the painful images, don't you? But my messenger and your messenger, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, swore by Allah that the martyr will not experience pain except that of a pinch. So no matter how many megatons of bomb may hit, that the pain that a martyr feels is just like a pinch, like a bee sting before the soul is taken. So just as if I pinch you by the hand, do not have fear for them. I know you are saddened. So remember what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, that no one in this world dies and wishes to return to the world except the martyr. The martyr wishes that he would die for his sake 1,000 times. To keep dying for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake and come back. And now seeing things in Gaza that if you saw them with your own eyes, you would die of joy. These martyrs are alive and provided by their sustenance by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then the sister says, Assalamu alaikum, subhanallah, the beautiful flowers in this message from Gaza are encouraging all of us. Brothers and sisters, what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised is true. And what he has promised each and every one of us is to be patient with our conditions and the conditions of others in this ummah of the Prophet Muhammad. is not the kind of admonition and saying, don't get angry, don't get upset. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us human emotions, and yes, we should be angry. We should be upset. We should feel the pain that our brothers and sisters are feeling because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu has made it clear to us that when any part of this ummah hurts, we should feel the pain. And it's like it's a cold or a fever or something. We should catch it too. And this is metaphorically, not literally. But we should feel the pain. So all of us should feel hurting today. All of us. That's admit that if we don't feel the pain of what's going on in Gaza today, something is wrong with my heart and something is wrong with your heart. If we don't feel upset and ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to relieve the suffering of our brothers and sisters, with the understanding that those who have been taken by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in these conditions are dying as martyrs. They're waiting for us. They will be there waiting for us. It's something that we all should desire, not to be oppressed and killed in the manner that they were, but we're all striving for the Akhirah. So let us pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala relieves the suffering of our brothers and sisters in Gaza.
Ameen.
And grant them victory. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant victory to those who stand firm for his cause and grant them Jannatul Firdaus. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us an understanding of this deen that is useful for us in this world and in the next. Brothers and sisters, I have just a few quick announcements. The first one is that there is a